Thanks to cutting-edge computer graphics, television and movie producers can now make stunning landscapes that appear completely real. The latest science fiction movies create whole worlds that look so convincing that you could reach out and touch them. All the places you're going to see in today's video aren't the work of Hollywood producers, though. They're incredible, real places on planet Earth, and you can go and visit them if you like. The Grand Prismatic Spring in Wyoming, USA is a fine place to start. The unique natural formation looks like a giant sunspot stretched out across the land. With a pool of perfectly clear blue water at its heart, the spring is in Yellowstone National Park, which sits on top of a huge supervolcano that will one day explode and take half of North America with it. Until then, the local conditions it creates serve up geological wonders like this one. The 250-foot by 380-foot spring is the third largest in the world and is especially well known for its bold and striking colors. The perfect blue turns to green thanks to the algae that have built up on its inner circle, which is surrounded by a golden rim darkening to red on its outer edges. The boiling spring discharges 560 gallons of water every minute. The picturesque hills of Zhangyi Danzia National Geopark in China look like they must have been sketched by the hand of a talented artist, but they're a naturally occurring rock formation. Some of the tourists who come to marvel at the hills think they look like a rolling sea of fire, but the locals prefer to think of them by their less threatening nickname of the Rainbow Mountains. National Geographic considers them to be one of the top 10 geological wonders in the world. The rocks look like this because different kinds of stone have been piling up against each other here for billions of years, and then weathered by the winds and water erosion. What you see is a combination of red sandstone, pallite, and seepite, which is gradually formed into stripes, taking the appearance of ribbons. On their outer edge, though, the colors become gray and yellow, almost like crystal. At dawn and at sunset, it looks like the land has caught fire. What could look more alien than a stone forest? This collection of tall, thin needles isn't on the surface of a distant world, though. It's the Grand Singing in Madagascar. The island nation has its own distinct culture, and that goes for the land and the animals as well as the people. These jagged rock formations are incredible to look at, but don't get too close to them. The word Singing means a place where you cannot walk. The rock is sharp, pointy, and uneven. If you tried to walk through these stone trees, you'd always be one small slip away from disaster. The largest of the needles is 2,600 feet high, and in the spaces between them, you'll find all manner of exotic flora and fauna, including wild lemurs. Scientists believe the Singing began to form 200 million years ago, with the spiny peaks carved by millennia of monsoon rain. We all think we know what a flat coastline should look like. The land ends on a beach, and then the sea begins, right? Well, apparently that's not always the case. After heavy flooding in Kerala, India during 2018, the natural order of things was disrupted by huge tides. A sandbed formed, stretching half a mile across the sea and splitting the tide in two. This isn't a beach that's drowned, it's a completely new formation of sand, which is attracting tourists in big numbers. Some brave visitors have taken to walking all the way along the thin strip of sand, which allows them to feel almost as if they were walking on water. We don't recommend trying it yourself, though. Local government officials and police have warned tourists that the sandbed isn't safe or stable and could move again in the event of high tides. It also sits very low in the water, meaning that even a small change in the tide could leave people stranded out in the water with no way of walking back to the shore. It's believed that this phenomenon has occurred once before, in 1996, and lasted for years before the sand was eventually washed back to the shore. Have you ever seen something beautiful and said to yourself that it looks good enough to eat? That temptation to eat what's in front of your eyes may never be stronger than it must be for those who pay a visit to the Chocolate Hills of Bohol Island in the Philippines. They're such an incredible sight to behold that many people think they should be classed as one of the 7 new wonders of the world. The huge, soft mounds look like giant haystacks made of chocolate, ranging from 150 to 400 feet in height. You have to visit toward the end of the dry season to see them in their full glory. During damp weather, they're covered with grass. But when things get drier, they take on their famous chocolate brown tone. Local legends say that the hills were formed by the tears of a giant named Arosh as he mourned the death of his lover. In reality, they're likely to be the result of coral deposits rising through the land because of rainwater and soil erosion, gradually being turned into their current shape by centuries of wind and weather. Trees come in many different shapes and sizes, but you won't find them in the perfect shape of a letter J anywhere but the Crooked Forest in Poland. There are more than 400 trees here, all of which have the exact same mysterious bend and curve. From their roots, they've grown parallel to the ground before changing direction and growing upwards towards the sky. More interestingly of all, nobody knows why they look like this. Some theories speculate that they were buried under heavy snow when they were young and were only able to resume their normal growth after the snow had thawed away. Others believe that the pull of gravity works differently on this part of the land, and the trees had to fight to escape it. Perhaps the most likely explanation is that they were deliberately forced into this shape by foresters who intended to make unique furniture from the unusual shapes before being forced to abandon their efforts when the Second World War broke out shortly after they were planted. 80 years later, they're still standing tall and keeping their secrets. The Richat structure in Ouaddaine, Mauritania has the appearance of a whirlpool, but there's no water to be found here. The intricate and beautiful pattern is completely made out of rock. Sitting in the middle of the Sahara Desert, this rocky pattern of circles is over 30 miles wide, so big that it can be seen from space. Astronauts nicknamed it the Bullseye and used it as a landmark to get their bearings when looking down from above. But natives of the continent prefer to call it the Eye of Africa. We once believed that this was an impact crater, but over time, scientists came to accept that it was too flat to have been caused by anything falling from above. Instead, we're now working on the theory that this was once a geological dome, which has been battered by centuries of harsh desert weather. The wind has gradually picked layers away from the dome, leaving this strange and almost perfectly flat pattern. For several months of every year, Westgate Lake Park in Melbourne, Australia performs an awesome party trick. It turns bright pink. The lake is artificial, but the pink water wasn't part of the design, and nor is it the result of a synthetic dye. The purpose of building it was to replace salt marsh deposits, and so there's a great deal of salt marsh in and below the water. When temperatures increase, the salt marsh combines with direct sunlight and a large algae population to create the striking optical effect. Once it's gone pink, it stays that way until the summer ends and temperatures begin to drop. Although visitors are welcome to come and take pictures, it's not a great idea to try getting in for a swim. The very high salt level of the water can cause irritation on contact with the skin. It doesn't do any harm to the animals living in or around it, but humans are a little more sensitive. Timing is everything if you want to see a river of fire running down a mountain. It happens for a matter of minutes on a limited number of days each year at Horsetail Fall, which is in Yosemite National Park, California. Two mighty streams of water flow from the El Capitan Mountain and plunge almost 1,600 feet before crashing onto rocks, sending a mist of spray into the air. At the end of every February, as the sun begins to set, the light of the fading sun will reflect off the rocks and catch the falling water perfectly, giving it the appearance of a giant tongue of flame. The effect is as if a fire was blazing somewhere inside the mountain. It lasts for only a few moments and then it's gone. So make sure you have your camera ready. A century ago, forest rangers here used to create a real firefall by pushing burning coal down the side of the mountain, but stopped when they realized they were causing a fairly major fire hazard. Fortunately, nature has taken over the job. Perhaps nowhere on Earth bears the scars of the awesome power of nature more than Antelope Canyon in Arizona. But what beautiful scars they are. The rocks here are so finely whipped and curved that they almost look like a mousse or an ice cream. Nothing has been done by humans to give the canyons this appearance, which looks for all the world like a Hollywood special effect. This was all carved out by wind, water, and the passing of the years. The Navajo know this location as a special and spiritual place, giving it a name in their native tongue, which means the place where water runs through the rocks. A narrow passageway allows tourists a route through the canyon where they'll be surrounded by smooth sandstone that stands 120 feet high. There's a constant flood risk in this area, which is why it's recommended to go with a qualified tour guide. This would be a bad place to get trapped. When you first set your eyes on Mexico's Hierve el Agua, you might believe you're seeing a waterfall more powerful and impressive than the famous Niagara Falls. You're not. No matter what your eyes are telling you, nothing on the side of this mountain is moving. There isn't even any water on the side of this mountain. There are, however, 2 mineral-rich water deposits on the very top. These pools are fed by natural springs full of magnesium and calcium carbonate. As the water from the pools drips toward the edge of the mountain, it seeps through cracks in the rock and deposits its mineral content right onto the heart of the rock. Over millions of years, these mineral deposits have created long, irregular patterns which look remarkably like flowing water. The name Hierve el Agua translates into English as the water boils, which is a reference to the fact that the water bubbles as it emerges from the springs on the top. The Zapotec people, who were native to this land over 2,000 years ago, diverted the springs to feed their plants and crops, accidentally creating this so-called frozen waterfall in the process. Down under, in New Zealand, if you're not familiar with the story of Split Apple Rock, then you'd likely assume that it's a strange modern art sculpture. It looks like a perfect representation of an apple cleaved in half. Unless there were sculptors around 120 million years ago, though, we are once again looking at a completely natural creation. The split apple is around 160 feet off the shoreline of Kei Teriteri and is completely composed of granite. The myths and legends of the local Maoris say that 2 warring gods fought over the rock, splitting it in half in the process. Thinking more scientifically, it's likely that a tiny crevice somewhere within the rock slowly filled with water and then froze during the Ice Age. As the water expanded, it cracked the rock and neatly split it in 2, leaving us with a beautiful apple. Just don't bite into it. It won't be good for your teeth. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.